When it was announced that former Fox News host Tucker Carlson's show was being taken off the air this past April, many around the country were shocked. The termination seemed to come so suddenly, almost like it was out of nowhere. I remember reacting to it live on this show. According to new reporting by former CNN host Stelter, some of Carlson's staffers were not entirely shocked. According to Stelter, at this point, Carlson had alienated many people and instigated many internal and external scandals. And while at this point many saw him as the face of Fox News, one of his producers said it was always going to end badly. We were burning too bright.
Stelter writes that 6 years into the primetime TV slot had reshaped Carlson, darkened his heart, and driven him to the edge, to the point where he began berating Fox News executives. And, quote, in the view of some of his own colleagues, he became unglued. According to his internal critics, Carlson treated female executives as part and parcel with the misogyny displayed on his show. One host reportedly said that, quote, Tucker is very titillated by misogyny.
So we should note this is all coming from Stelter in his new book. Stelter was a frequent critic of, or frequently criticized by Tucker Carlson. They were mutual critics of each other. Tucker Carlson made fun of him a lot. I've read through this Vanity Fair piece. I'm seeing a lot of attribution to unnamed producers and staffers. So, these are all people that Stelter claims he talked to. I think Stelter, on his show, did a lot we've disagreed with, kind of led the charge on the misinformation everywhere, it's so dangerous, blah, blah, blah. I think he has also done some good reporting on the situation at CNN subsequently to his own firing. I just think everyone should, take what they read here with a grain of salt. He tries to say it's kind of a conspiracy theory, the idea that Tucker was fired as a secret consequence of the Dominion lawsuit, like there was a handshake agreement to settle the lawsuit that Dominion said you have to get rid of Tucker Carlson. That's one idea of his firing. Stelter describes that as conspiracy theory, although notes that the author Michael Wolff has, in his book, The Fall, said that he had reporting that was the case. That was not, and he doesn't have any sourcing to back that up. So we're just like, it's competing things with sources that are not backed up.
But also, Stelter writes in this Vanity Fair piece, he agrees that both sides deny that that's the case, that Tucker Carlson and Fox News deny that this was
No, Dominion and Fox deny that that's the case. Not Tucker. Tucker, as people have, they don't know. From my own conversations.
He says, though Carlson would later suggest his ouster was a condition of the Dominion suit, there's no evidence to support that theory, and both parties deny it.
I think the both parties is Fox and Dominion in that, but it's not clear, I guess.
Okay.
My conversations with Tucker people, I've not spoken to Tucker directly or specifically about this or much else in a long time, but is that they are genuinely unaware of what is the reason, and they have like 5 theories, and that's one of them, and they're not sure. But it's very interesting. Obviously, it is the case that some of what Tucker had to say was, I think it's uncontroversial, made Fox uncomfortable or, caused problems. I think it's probably true that he had the staff was very loyal to him personally. That's, not so rare in cable news or in the media to create a sub-staff that gets along really well with the personality. It's a team. And Tucker was good at fostering a team environment. Just full disclosure, I worked for him years and years ago, more than a decade ago, at the Daily Caller before he was on Fox, before the Trump era. That's where I kind of started out, and he was a great boss. He gave me great advice and was really beloved by the staff.
I wonder what you make of some of the characterization of what the workplace was like. We read earlier that Tucker was, quote, very titillated by misogyny. Apparently that's a quote from one of the unnamed hosts that's cited in this article. It goes on to say that some of the staffers theorized, well, that's a little personal, but theorized that his mother's mistreatment, she abandoned his family when he was 6 and due to negativity toward women. That's neither here nor there. The counterpoint I heard from from a Fox lifer, now this is in Tucker's defense, was that Tucker didn't respect anyone of any gender. Carlson hit men with the same C word too. See you next Tuesday. So according to Fox's Boys Will Be Boys etiquette, he was apparently an equal opportunity basher. Quote, parentheses, remember this was supposed to be a defense of him. Does that kind of Boys Will Be Boys atmosphere resonate with you at all?
I think he was, again, he's fiercely loyal to his people, whether they're not his people include men and women, or had historically at times that I've known him, and he was he could be loud and abrasive and combative on their behalf toward external people trying to cause issues. I remember one time he when I worked for him at the Daily Caller, it was somebody wrote a story that actually I think the GOP was mad about. I think maybe it was like accusing the GOP of being too soft on immigration or something like that. And we got a call from a RNC staffer who was mad, and it was a man. He unleashed on the person in defense of the reporter who was female. So it's not a male versus female thing. He was loyal to the team. He supported his people, and that's why his people generally, over time, have been very loyal to him in turn.
No, I hear that. I guess the question isn't about the loyalty of the team. It's whether or not the atmosphere that's being described here is accurate. One, because if it is, it does suggest that there is some accurate reporting that's being done here, and that these sources are giving at least an accurate gloss on what the work atmosphere was. That's not to say that cursing a lot or whatever is justification for his firing, but they explain it like this. They say Carlson told a friend that the word rhymes with duck is so overused it's lost all its power and meaning, so rhymes with bunt was more effective. It's super naughty, but it's to the point.
He has a point there.
Right, but I think one of the arguments being made here is that there's many reasons why this wasn't necessarily surprising, and part of it was that he did make enemies within Fox. People who were not on his team obviously did not find him to be so friendly, and that there were people who potentially were on his team that might not have been as comfortable with this environment. Well,
he was clashing. I mean, the media environment we're living in right now, the news cycle we're going through, I think he is sorely missed as a fixture on cable news, because he clashed with other perspectives in the conservative movement, particularly on foreign policy, and to have him, he's still active. We're covering the things he's saying. But to not have, automatically at whenever it was 7 or 8 p.m., it flips over to Sean Hannity or from Jesse Waters to Tucker, where you get a very different attitude about what the proper role of the U.S. government is in the world stage, the proper role of our funding, whether this is making us safer, more in that libertarian or America first or paleo-conservative, whatever word you want to give to it. So different and so important, and I think it's really, and again, maybe that, I have no evidence of this, but maybe that different perspective, people say, it's personality problems, too difficult to work with, too mean to others. Is that because you didn't like what he had to say? Are you rounding up that his perspective was totally contrary to yours and was popular and was the most popular thing on television? Is that what you mean by difficult to work with? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but this keeps coming up. And it is frustrating that we do live in a world where sometimes people are targeted for their beliefs, but also a world where sometimes those people do things that are kind of morally wrong or in some cases legally wrong. We had this conversation around Russell Brand. I think it is reasonable to raise the question of why his bad behavior, much of which he confessed to in his own books, only became an issue when he was done with Hollywood, but saying things that were inconvenient to the system. I think that's a perfectly legitimate question to raise. We don't even need to
speculate, because in the article where the accusers come forward, they say it's important to do so because of the harm he's causing now with his misinformation.
And yet it doesn't obviate the need for an investigation if he really, in fact, did sexually assault people or engage with someone who's underage, or whatever the accusations are. I think it wasn't underage in England, so it wasn't.
Yes.
It would have been in the United States, but not in England. So, we had this conversation with Donald Trump. I debated this with Glenn Greenwald actually recently, and it's like, okay, is this a political prosecution? Obviously. But at what point do we say we still have to prosecute a crime? If Trump really did murder someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, are we going to say we can't have a murder trial because he's running for president? I mean, where does the line come? And so, you're
just part of the left trying to get Trump at any cost.
Sure.
I'm kidding.
It gets a little exhausting, and you do wish that people like Tucker Carlson, I do think there is, frankly, value in someone, at least one person, not being a war hawk at Fox News. I think there was value in him being there largely because it's, from my perspective, the best of a bad bunch on this one very narrow issue. Whether that weighs out some of the other stuff he said, that's up for debate. But on this one narrow issue, sure. if that being the case, you wish people would protect themselves a little better, not make themselves such vulnerable targets. Other theories articulated in this article as to why he might have been fired is because he did that Ray Epps episode where he said, I'm going to do everything I can to ruin your life. And Epps was expected to file a lawsuit against Fox as a consequence. Of course, the Dominion stuff. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And if you really are valuable, if you really are going to be the Republican nominee, if you really are a unique voice of a generation, you know, it would help, I think, for people to keep their noses a little cleaner.
Sure,
maybe not say so many C-bombs in the workplace. I don't know.
Fair enough. Also, but people had their knives sharpened for him. And I don't think it's an accident that his perspective was so popular and so different. But yes, let's all aspire to keep our and wash our mouths out with soap before we get on television. A lesson I have learned recently. More Rising right after this.